They said she was nothing. A nobody. Just another girl sleeping on park benches, begging for scraps. But that morning, a billionaire saw her, kneeling in the dust, teaching his little daughter to read with a broken pencil and torn cardboard. He told the driver, "Stop the car." And in that moment, his life, and hers, changed forever. The street was already awake before the sun. Vendors were shouting over the hiss of frying oil, motorcycles zigzagged through the morning traffic, and the scent of roasted corn drifted lazily through the air. Most people walked with their eyes down, minds already chasing the day's worries. But one man, sitting in the back of a sleek black sedan, noticed something no one else seemed to see. Near the park fence, a young woman sat on the bare ground. Her clothes were worn and dust-stained, the soles of her shoes nearly gone. In her hand was a stub of a pencil, so short she had to pinch it between her fingertips like a fragile secret. Before her sat a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, her tiny knees pressed into the dirt. The girl was laughing. Not the empty, polite laugh of a child trying to please an adult, but the full-bellied laughter of someone who had just discovered something magical. The young woman had drawn a crooked letter on a piece of torn cardboard, and the girl was tracing it with her finger. From the back seat, the billionaire watched. His driver was already slowing for the red light, but his eyes stayed locked on that strange scene. He'd seen beggars, street performers, and hawkers before, but this was different. "Stop the car," he said. The driver hesitated. "Sir? We're... Stop. The... car." The tires kissed the edge of the curb. The billionaire stepped out, polished shoes crunching against loose gravel. His shadow fell over the young woman, and only then did she look up. Her eyes. They weren't the dull, empty eyes of someone who had given up. They were bright, alive, holding on to something the world had tried and failed to crush. The little girl's smile faltered, and she turned, recognizing the tall man in the dark suit. "Daddy," she squealed, scrambling to her feet. He ignored the curious stares of a few passers-by and crouched beside his daughter. "What are you doing here, Ada?" he asked softly. "She's teaching me," Ada said, pointing to the young woman. "Her name is Lonnie. She's teaching me letters." His gaze shifted back to the woman, Lonnie. Her voice was quiet, respectful, but steady. "She came to sit beside me, sir. I didn't want her to be bored while you were in your meeting." "Meeting? Right." He'd been taking a call in the park earlier, his driver watching Ada, and somehow, the little whirlwind had wandered off. But instead of fear or scolding, there was something else stirring in him, a strange curiosity. "You teach children often?" he asked. Lonnie hesitated, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Only when they ask. I used to, before." Her voice dipped, as though she'd stepped onto fragile ice. "Before." The word hung there, heavy and unanswered. Ada tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can she come with us? Please." It was ridiculous. Unthinkable. He had meetings, schedules, a life that didn't have space for stray stories from the street. And yet, the way Ada's eyes sparkled, the way Lonnie had held herself despite everything, it gnawed at him. "Get in the car," he heard himself say. Lonnie blinked. "Sir? I'll take you somewhere to eat. And talk." She hesitated, glancing toward the patch of ground where she'd been sitting. There was nothing there, no bag, no belongings, nothing that spoke of a life beyond that fence. Finally, she nodded. The driver opened the door, his confusion poorly hidden, and the billionaire slid in first, Ada bouncing beside him. Lonnie followed, folding her hands in her lap as though afraid to touch the leather seats. The ride was quiet at first, save for the hum of the engine and Ada's occasional bursts of chatter. She told her father how Lonnie had shown her how to draw letters with straight lines and curves, how she'd made the learning into a game. "Where did you learn to teach like that?" he asked suddenly. Lonnie's lips curved into the smallest smile. "I used to work in a community center. Kids who couldn't afford school fees would come. I stayed, until the center closed." "What happened after?" The smile faded. After I lost the room I was renting. It's been here and there since then. Ada frowned. Here and there? You mean, outside? Lonnie didn't answer, but her silence said enough. They reached a small but elegant cafe, the kind where servers glided between tables like dancers. Heads turned when they entered, not because of him, but because of her. Worn clothes, dusty shoes, sitting in a place built for polished heels and tailored suits. He ordered for everyone. Lonnie murmured a thank you when the food came, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the fork. She ate slowly, as though afraid the meal would vanish if she rushed. Between bites, she asked about Ada's school, her favorite subjects, her dreams. Not once did she speak of herself unless asked directly. And so he asked. She told him about her parents, gone too soon. About an uncle who'd taken her in but saw her as a burden. About leaving home at 17 to find work, and how life had swallowed her plans whole. Her voice never wavered, even when the words turned heavy. By the time they left the cafe, the billionaire felt something he hadn't expected, not pity, but respect. She hadn't begged him for money. She hadn't even hinted at wanting anything from him. As the car rolled back toward the city center, Ada was already leaning against Lonnie's shoulder, fast asleep. The billionaire sat back, staring out at the blur of buildings. He'd seen so many people try to buy dignity with money. Lonnie had kept hers without a cent to her name. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain, he wasn't ready to let this be the last time they met. The cafe smelled faintly of fresh bread and cinnamon, but Amara barely noticed. Her hands were wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, yet her mind was elsewhere, still replaying the moment the billionaire, Adrian Cole, had asked her to come with him. They sat by the window, the morning light spilling across the small table between them. Adrian was not speaking much. He simply watched her, as if studying the quiet way she carried herself, the way her eyes never seemed to settle in one place for too long. She didn't know why she'd agreed to follow him here. Maybe it was the way his daughter clung to her. Maybe it was the first time in years someone had spoken to her without the tone of pity or disgust. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. I want to know your story. Her chest tightened. People rarely asked her story, and when they did, they didn't really want to hear the answer. But something about his voice made her believe he was serious. Amara hesitated, then began slowly. I wasn't always like this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had a home once, a mother who believed I could be anything. But she passed away when I was 14. After that, everything fell apart. She told him about the aunt who took her in but only saw her as a burden. How she had to leave school to sell fruits on the roadside. How, when she turned 18, she was thrown out for refusing to marry a man twice her age. Her voice cracked when she spoke of the nights she slept on park benches, clutching her worn-out backpack to her chest. And yet, she smiled faintly when she spoke about the children from the neighborhood who came to her, asking her to teach them letters and numbers. It's the only thing that makes me forget I'm hungry, she said. Adrian's eyes didn't leave her. He was silent for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Then he said quietly, you taught my daughter more in 10 minutes than her private tutors have managed in weeks. Her head lifted, surprised. He leaned forward. Come work for me. The words hung in the air between them. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Work for you. Doing what? Teaching her. Spending time with her. You'll be paid well. You won't have to worry about food or where you'll sleep. It sounded too good to be true. And life had taught Amara that when something sounded too good to be true, it usually was. Why me? She asked quietly. Adrian's gaze softened, but his answer was firm. Because you see people, not positions. You saw my daughter, not my money. That's rare. Amara's heart beat faster. She wanted to say yes, to escape the cold nights and the gnawing hunger. But fear held her back. What if I'm not good enough? His eyes held hers steadily. Then we'll learn together. That night, Amara found herself in a warm guest room for the first time in years. The sheets smelled of lavender. The bed felt like a cloud. But even as she lay there, she couldn't sleep. She thought about the weight of the choice she'd just made, stepping into a billionaire's home, into a life she didn't understand, into a future she couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, she woke to the sound of birdsong instead of street noise. She hesitated before getting out of bed, almost afraid that if she opened the door, the comfort of the night before would vanish like a dream. But it didn't. The hallway outside was bright and lined with family photos, Adrian as a young man, holding a baby, a woman in a summer dress smiling beside him. Amara's eyes lingered on the woman's face, noticing the warmth in her expression. Something in her chest tightened. Downstairs, she found Adrian in the kitchen, pouring orange juice into a glass. His daughter, little Lila, sat at the table in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep. "Good morning," Adrian said, his voice calm but carrying the quiet authority she'd already come to recognize. Lila's face lit up when she saw Amara. "You stayed." Amara smiled despite herself. "I stayed." Breakfast felt strange, not because of the food, but because of the absence of judgment. Nobody was looking at her like she didn't belong. Afterward, Adrian handed her a notebook and a box of colored pencils. "She's all yours for the morning," he said, nodding toward Lila. Amara felt a flicker of nervousness. "What do you want me to teach her?" Adrian's answer was simple, "Whatever you think she needs." They began with stories. Amara drew little pictures in the notebook and asked Lila to make up a tale for each one. Soon, the little girl was giggling, inventing wild adventures about animals and castles. By lunch, Adrian had come to watch. He stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, saying nothing, just listening. And for the first time in years, Amara felt the strange, almost forgotten warmth of being valued. But not everyone in the house shared Adrian's view. That evening, as Amara was heading upstairs, she overheard two maids whispering in the hallway. "Can you believe he brought a girl from the street into the house?" one of them said, her tone sharp. The other snorted. "Probably some charity project. Let's see how long she lasts." Amara paused, her hand tightening on the banister. The old ache in her chest returned, the reminder that not everyone saw worth in her. She went to her room without saying a word. Later that night, as she sat by the window, she saw Adrian in the garden, speaking quietly on his phone. His shoulders were tense. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the tone in his voice drew her attention. "Yes. I know it's been years," he was saying. "But I can't let her go through what her mother went through. Not again." Amara frowned. Who was he talking about? And what did it have to do with her? That question would find its answer far sooner than she expected. Because 2 days later, someone from her past walked into that house, and threatened to destroy everything she had just begun to hope for.